Welcome to Wawa Sanwar. Today we're talking about Wee Ka Siong's bold assessment of the unity government's future. You know, when a major political leader gets up to speak at their party conference, you sort of expect the standard stuff, calls for unity, promises, maybe a jab at the opposition.
The boilerplate speech, yeah?
Exactly. But what Datuk Seri, Dr. Wee Ka Siong, delivered at the Malaysian Chinese Association's conference, well, it was something else entirely. It felt like a public declaration of independence.
It really was. It was MCA basically laying out their terms and conditions for staying inside the unity government.
And there were two messages that just stood out. I mean, they were profoundly important.
Oh, absolutely. First, they put a hard limit, an expiration date, on their support for the Prime Minister. And second, they made it crystal clear that they do not see this government as a long-term home.
And that's the real hook, isn't it? The fact that they did this so publicly. This isn't some backroom negotiation. This is a very clear, very public statement of conditional support.
And you have to remember the context here. The unity government wasn't formed out of choice. It came about because of a hung parliament, and really at the decree of the head of state to ensure stability.
MCA joined out of a sense of duty, essentially.
Out of obedience to that directive. So for them to come out now and say, you know, our support has a time limit and our commitment is not absolute, it signals something has shifted. Whatever was bubbling under the surface, well, it just came right out into the open.
Okay, let's drill down into that first point, the timeline, because that was the bombshell. Wee Ka Siong stated very clearly that their support for Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim is only for one term.
Just for the duration of this 15th Parliament.
Which is, that's a dramatic thing to say when you're part of a coalition.
It's a huge act of political brinkmanship. The whole point of a coalition is to project stability, long-term loyalty. You're supposed to be in it together.
Right, until the next election at least.
At least. But MCA is, in essence, publicly planning their exit strategy while they're still in the room.
But doesn't it undermine the very stability they claim they joined to protect? Why would you do that? What do they possibly gain from telling your partners, hey, we're only with you for a little while longer?
I think it's about managing public perception. It's critical for them, especially after the last election. They need to draw a very clear line between themselves and the other major parties in the government.
To show they're different.
Exactly. To show they haven't just been absorbed. By setting a limit, they can argue, look, we're only here for national stability, not for power or positions. It's an attempt to win back some credibility with voters who are pretty cynical about politics right now.
That desire for independence, it links perfectly to their second big statement, the one that really caught my ear, that the unity government is not their sanctuary.
Yes, and we need to talk about that word, sanctuary. In politics, it implies a safe harbor, a permanent base where you're protected. For decades, the Malaysian Chinese Association had that sanctuary under Barisan Nasional.
If you were in the coalition, you were safe. That was the deal.
That was the deal. Loyalty meant political safety. So by rejecting this government as a sanctuary, they're saying a few things. One, we don't trust this coalition to protect us long term.
Two, we're not ideologically comfortable here.
And three, we reserve the right to be a free agent when this is all over. They're basically defining themselves as temporary tenants, not family members. It's an alliance of circumstance, not of vision.
So it all comes back to obeying the head of state's decree for the here and now, but making absolutely no promises for the future.
Precisely. If they saw it as a sanctuary, they'd have to defend every single policy, good or bad. By saying it isn't, they give themselves the political license to criticize, to create distance, and ultimately to leave without being accused of betrayal.
Okay, so if their support is conditional, what are the conditions? That leads us straight to the red lines they talked about.
This is the nuts and bolts of it. These are the non-negotiables. We laid out specific principles where they refuse to stay silent.
And these aren't small things. They're fundamental to how a democracy should work.
Absolutely. They listed 4 things they will always speak out against. 1, suppressing free speech.
Okay.
2, bullying the media. 3, undermining democratic institutions.
Yeah.
And 4, any action that damages the national interest.
What's interesting is that those points aren't about race or economics. They're about the structures of governance itself.
Which is a very powerful criticism to make from inside the government. It suggests a fear that the very foundations are at risk.
But what leverage do they actually have? They don't hold any ministerial posts. So if a red line is crossed, what can they do besides, well, talk about it?
Their leverage is public opinion. That's all they have. Since they're not in the cabinet, Their MPs are effectively backbenchers, even though they're part of the government. They know their only power comes from their voice.
And they're really leaning into that identity. Siong said they refuse to be a yes-man party.
And that phrase is so loaded. It implies being submissive, just nodding along. It's a direct rejection of that old model in Bears and National, where smaller parties often had to stay quiet to keep their seats at the table. MCA is trying to completely change its public image.
And they seem to be tapping into this real public frustration. They said voters are sick of silent parties, sick of rhetoric that just sugarcoats problems.
Oh, completely. That whitewashing rhetoric, as they called it. By rejecting that, they're trying to align themselves with the public mood. They're saying, we hear your dissatisfaction, and we're going to be your voice for it, even from inside the government.
Which brings us to how they define their strange new role. What does a government backbencher who doesn't see the government as a sanctuary actually do?
They laid it out pretty clearly. They said their job is to monitor the performance of ministers.
A job usually for the opposition.
Right. And to offer policy advice, and to be the voice of the people. They'll praise good policies, but they won't hesitate to criticize bad ones. And that led to that killer line.
That MCA is in government, but acts like the opposition.
In government, but acts like the opposition. It's a fascinating tightrope walk.
It seems like they're trying to get the best of both worlds. They get credit for contributing to national stability, but they also get to keep the critical stance that might help them survive the next election.
It's a political risk management strategy. If the government does well, they can say they helped from the inside. If the government becomes unpopular,
they can say, we told you so. We tried to warn them.
We were never fully on board. It preserves their independence.
And right after laying all this out, they provided the justification for it all. A warning shot, really, aimed right at the central government.
Yes, the Sabah state election results. Siong used those results as a direct wake-up call to the unity government leadership.
He's saying the losses in Sabah weren't just a local issue.
Not at all. He's framing them as a symptom of a national problem, a sign of deep public anger directed squarely at the central government's style and attitude.
Style and attitude. That's a bit vague, but you can guess what he means.
You can infer it, right? Maybe perceived arrogance, or that reforms are moving too slowly. MCA is holding up the Sabah results as hard evidence, saying, this isn't just talk, this is what happens, you lose votes.
And he attached a very real consequence to that warning. He said if the government doesn't change course, that the Sabah tsunami will crash onto peninsular Malaysia.
That phrase, Sabah tsunami, that's designed to scare people. It's a direct threat. He is tying the current government's behavior directly to a potential electoral wipeout in the peninsula next time.
It's just a stunning thing for a component party to say out loud. It completely chips away at that narrative of unity and stability the Prime Minister's trying to project.
It's the ultimate leverage, because now MCA can frame all their internal criticism not as dissent, but as a necessary course correction to save the entire coalition from itself.
And it brings us right back to the beginning. That warning is why they can't afford to see the government as a sanctuary. If they do, they risk going down with the ship.
Exactly. This whole stance is, from their perspective, about political survival. They're trying to read the public mood and respond to it before it's too late. So we're seeing this new, highly conditional relationship being defined in public. They've set their boundaries.
So with all this laid out, where does this leave Malaysian politics for the next couple of years? They're still inside the government, technically.
And that's the big question. And really, it's a question for you to think about. When a party publicly puts a one-term limit on its support, when it adopts this identity of being in government but acting like the opposition, what does that actually do to the government's mandate? Does this conditional loyalty make MCA stronger, more responsive? Or does it just weaken the whole coalition by constantly airing its dirty laundry in public and giving ammunition to the actual opposition? That's the balancing act we're going to watch play out.
A fascinating test of political strategy.
Remember to like and subscribe for more videos like this.